So, chapter 1152 has just come out and it reveals some interesting things regarding Conqueror's Haki. Notably the fact that you can hurt the seemingly immortal Holy Knights if you apply your Conqueror's infusion in a certain way, and even more notably than that, the fact that this idiot Zoro did not know he had Conqueror's Haki, which I called out 10 months ago in passing and 3 months ago in depth. Go watch that after this. But that isn't what this video is going to be about. No, in fact, it's something a bit more subtle that Oda's been cooking up in the background ever since about Marineford, I want to say. A fundamental piece about the color of the Supreme King that's been kept intentionally vague, just like the fact Zoro didn't know of his Conqueror status, which again, I called out. And it's to do with this little panel of Sanji just after he insists to Gaban on the fact that he's the other Conqueror on Luffy's crew that he just mentioned. A bit odd of Oda to just put that in there. It seems like there's extra emphasis on whatever he's shouting at or is being shouted at by Gaban, and it just so happens to get the gears turning in my head a bit, and I'll just say what I've come up with. Every single person has the capacity for Conqueror's Haki. I don't know how ridiculous that sounds to you, but I think it's a very plausible theory. Something that I very briefly discussed on the concept of Kobe getting Conqueror's Haki, which I don't think is possible, but only under our current understanding of Conquerors, which has been kept quite limited, I believe. Again, intentionally so. Let's go over how. I guess we'll start with the reason why I think certain characters won't be getting the color of the Supreme King under current circumstances. Conqueror's Haki for the most part has been implied to be indicative of a character's disposition from the moment they're born. You can see it when you look at all the Conquerors at a very young age prior to even knowing what Haki is. They've all got a kingly vibe to them, whether that's in ambition or just in how they generally behave. Garp in Marineford even outright says so when he sees Luffy use Conquerors for the first time, that he was born with it. And as it happens, a lot of descendants of Conquerors users are Conquerors themselves. I can think of Luffy, Dragon, Ace, Yamato, Shanks, Katakuri. So it seems like you really do have to have this ability from the jump, but I am here to refute this. On the point I just made about the descendants, that's just a simple matter of correlation not equaling causation. Instead of looking at something innate within these people, I instead encourage you to try and look at the circumstances of their upbringing on a case-by-case basis. Mainly their backstories and any influences or wills that they could have been subject to. And you will find every single one has been molded into being a Conqueror, obviously. This idea that Conquerors are like something that are decided by the heavens, given at random, just to me personally does not flow with the messaging of this story, in my opinion. Birthright doesn't mean anything in One Piece, is what I gather. Furthermore, if you are the descendant of a Conqueror, chances are your circumstances are going to be quite exceptional. Case in point, Yamato. Your father's Kaido, he has his ambitions of taking over Wano, he ultimately has to face Kozuki Oden, defeats him, but his way of life has a profound impact on your character and is what allows you to go on in the upcoming 20 years you're held captive on Onigashima. If anything, he's inherited Oden's Conquerors. You can do this with literally anyone else who qualifies, right? The circumstances of other characters, however, could make it so that that person never gets anywhere near this power. I think notably to Sanji and Kobe with Judge and Alvida respectively. However, their current surroundings, life experiences, battles are all very different now, are they not? Please do keep that in mind. But Monkey D. Garp allegedly, supposedly, puts the end to all this by dropping the bomber he does in Marineford, and to that I say, he believes in the misconception, even as someone who should be very adept at this stage in Conqueror's infusion. I was already thinking it, but with this chapter's revelation of there being a way to damage immortals if you apply your Conqueror's Haki in a certain way, it's clear to me that most characters are not fully aware of Haki and its full scope. Very understandable considering it's a power only used in the second half of the Grand Line, and takes years to master. But if you insist Garp knows what he's talking about, also consider the fact that Vegapunk, the world's best scientist 500 years ahead of his time, researching into topics like the soul, does not get a single line talking about Haki or researching it on screen. that guy Oda's hiding something. However, if you must put your stock into anyone, I think you should put it into the two characters that have discovered the truth of the world in Silver's Rayleigh and most recently, Scopper Gaban. But what does the One Piece have anything to do with this? Let me lay it down for you. If the One Piece contains a story of Joy Boy turning the Void Century, it must surely contain something about Emu and their current powers, including its weakness of Conqueror's Haki. And like Vegapunk, they surely must know of Emu's flooding plot as well. Now if you're following the theory I'm laying out, that everyone is capable of getting Conqueror's Haki if they find themselves in the right environment, what if at least part of the reason why Emus flooded the world is so that less people can interact and influence each other, which means less people can oppose them and their powers, and Joy Boys explained that to the Roger Pirates. The One Piece having some Haki exposition wouldn't even be that crazy, because how else would Rayleigh find out Roger was using the voice of all things if he didn't even know a year before? Something to think about. And plus, if you remember Rayleigh's words, he describes it as the embodiment of the user's spirit and doesn't mention anything about it being innate beyond saying Luffy's inner talents with it had already been awakened, which I don't think contradicts my theory since some are obviously going to be more adept in certain Haki types than others. And Gaban this week, which spawned this video, tells something in response to Sanji asking whether or not he too has the color of the Supreme King, and we get a very mysterious panel of him reacting in response to what Gaban said. And with everything I've just outlined, I believe he tells something along the lines of, you don't have it right now. Something that Sanji interprets as I've been saying, everyone can technically get it, but it's just a matter of your mindset currently. Does that guarantee him specifically getting Conquerors? No, but I do believe if Oda ever wants to demystify it and in addition dismantle what I've called the misconception of it, where in which you have to be born with it, Sanji would be in the pole position to do exactly that. I find it fits quite well with Sanji's character since Whole Cake Island, which has been primarily defined by his self-worth. And I think that matches his reaction. He's not disappointed as if he was told that he doesn't have it and never will, but he's neither excited as if he's been told he does currently possess it. Option 2 for me would be Kobe because his character has gone down a very similar trajectory to Sanji's. That's my shot from deep. Might hit it like my last one with Zoro, but it's a tentative situation, bro, I can't lie. It's a bit... I don't know about this one. And very quickly, we also get the reveal that Luffy has to pay attention on how he uses his Conqueror's Haki in regards to the Immortal Holy Knights, who apparently aren't actually, according to Gaban. It's called into question what Luffy was doing in Egghead earlier this week, because if Advanced Conquerors was the answer, then how did he not defeat the Gorosei and Saturn? But it seems it's a different application entirely rather than a just punch harder bro type of situation. So even more applications of Conquerors inbound? If you want to hear what I think, I believe it's actually a matter of timing. If you're punching through a Holy Knight, you have to infuse your Conquerors on them the moment you're in their body. So you're imposing your will on whatever is helping them regenerate. But yeah, that's all I got from this chapter. Long running theory on Zoro proven. Elbaf about to give us a great flashback, hopefully. Shanks actually looks more interesting by the second, and subtle signs that have been accumulating for a minute set to maybe change something fundamental to Haki that we previously thought was fact. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, whatever it may be. Do you think a Sanji or a Kobe getting Conquerors is more likely now? Like if you like the video, but subscribe before you do. That's all from me. Have a good one. Bye bye.